a lot, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks a lot for having me back here again. Mister, didn't you hear it in the deluge of the times? Over and over, respond. You did, I need. It's that old ear wadding that's stuck in my ears. It's but hushes that left his sound. Ors knuckle. What is your trouble? Is that great Finn leader himself in his joy kimono on his statue riding a high horse for hangest? Father of authors, is it himself, yon there? Is it that, on fallen common? Oh, you're thinking of Ashley's amphitheater, where the bobby restrained you making a sugar-stuck pouts to the ghost-white horse of the peppers. Throw your cobwebs from your eyes, woman, and spread your washing proper. It's well I know your sort of slop, flat. Ireland sobers, Ireland stiff. Lord help you, Maria Grease, the load is with me, your prayers. Anonson, Madam Amgat, were you lifting your elbows? Tell us, glazy cheeks in Conway, Cunningham canteen, what, hobbly hips, flop. You were get to creaker, bit your butts to degree. Ant I since the damp dawn, Maved Mally Aycock, with corrugose pulse and varicose veins, my prime axle smashed, Alice Jane into Colline, and my one-eyed open mongrel, twice run over, soaking and bleaching and boiling rags and sweating a cold, a widow like me, for the deck my tennis champion son, the laundryman with the lavender flannels. You won your Limpopo limp from the Husky Hussars when the collars and cuffs was there to the town and your slur gave the stink to Carlo? Holy scramunda, I saw it again, near the Golden Falls, Ixus on light. Zents of light, subdue your noise, you humble creature. What was it but a blackberry growth on Dicrazer's ass? Oh, you mean 4 of them? All 4 of them, draves and trays in the midst. And old Johnny McDougal along with them. Is that pool bank bent far? Or a fireboat christing near Krishna? Or a glow I behold within the hedge? Or my Gary come back from the Indies? Wait to the hunting of the loon, love. Dive, lily, die. I see that wonder in your eye. We will meet again. We'll part once more. The spot I'll seek, if the hour you'll find. My chart shines high where the blue milk's upset. Forgive me quick, I'm going, bye-bye. And you, pluck your watch, forget me not. Your even load, to save to journey's end. My sights are swimming ticker on me by the shadows to this place. I so home slowly now, my own way, my valley way. Tony, I too, wrath mine. Now, what was that? Could be something I ate. What that was a excerpt from James Joyce Finnegan's Wake, and I really can't make heads or tails of what it's really about. I'm sure there's Greek and Latin in there and Celtic and quotes and all sorts of hidden things, but it's a little scrap that I've dragged around and read over and over again to myself, though I don't know what the hell it means or what its reference or meaning. I love it, and it means a great deal to me. And I think that, you know, at a certain point, we're always trying to grasp for what we're doing, and what our rational mind trying to figure out, like, what is our work about. And sometimes I think it's fine just to not know what the hell you're doing. In fact, maybe even better. It's the slide lecture is like, I'm in an unusual part of my life in the sense that I'm in a part of my life where I'm not so sure I'm interested in explaining away what I do. Though we go to school to do that. You go to MFA school to decode, to find your historical references, and to talk about that and unpack your luggage in front of everybody. And I think that that's fine, and there's a time and place to do that. But at this point in my life, I'm more into the mystery and confusion and confusing myself. So, bear with me. So we'll start with the first slide. The year is 1991. I get into Cooper Union, I go to the 8th floor, I collaborate with a friend, we paint this mural, the president's office is right in the corner, and I'm promptly thrown out. So, within 8 months, I was there, I left, and went to SVA. And that's where I continued my hijinks. But, you know, I feel like as your career gets longer and longer, it's filled with so much of this. You know, and that's also what I'm trying to get at is that you say with such conviction that you're here, and then the next moment you're here. And sometimes they're different places. So, anyhow, yeah, this is a collaborative thing. Okay, what I would say is just as a first thing about my work, I'm kind of trying to sum it up with calling it 3 C's. And the 3 C's would be comedy, color, and collage. Comedy, color, and collage are like 3 of the most dominant themes that run through all of the work that I do, whether it's music, collage, painting, whatever the hell it is. I guess like you could add a couple more C's, which would be collection and collaboration, but let's just go with comedy, color, and collage. Okay, so this is another collaboration I did while in SVA. These first couple slides will just be work from the like 93, 92, 93. This is a painting I did with another painter, Brendan Cass, and we loved Mondrian, so we painted the Mondrian thing up there and wrote oats underneath it. Painting with someone else was a lot of fun because it was more of like a game where we were just kind of doodling on a surface together. So down at the bottom there's a Pac-Man ghost and a T made of 2 Pac-Mans, and it just was exactly where we were at the time. We were learning about modernism and its you know, and all its awesome things, and processing it and having a good time. So this painted with tempera, then covered with package tape, and those 2 things we called Smoky Balls. They're just big tape balls that are taped on top of this thing. Funny story is that we tried to give this to Robert Reimer because he came to SVA. Strangely, he left it. He looked at us like we were crazy. We were wide-eyed and we were like, "We love your work." And he was like, thank you. We made this for you." Thanks. So this is some work from the same time, and I was Xeroxing stuff and then painting with tempera on the Xerox. In this instance, there is rope that's been dipped in tempera, and then the whole surface is covered with a clear fabric and covered with rabbit skin glue. This is another thing from that period where it's a group of Xeroxes that been painted over with tempera. There's a children's drawing. There's something from a children's coloring book. Okay, so I get out of school. Now, when I went to school, painting was proclaimed dead. I'm sure it's been proclaimed dead before then and shall be proclaimed dead a couple more times. But I was pretty pissed by that situation. You know, I gotta say, I've always loved the underdog. I like, you know, so I was like, I'm gonna do painting. That's it. I don't care. It's dead. You know, meanwhile, like, you know, in '94, Matthew Barney was coming to SVA to show us his Cream Master cycle, you know, which I think was exciting, but that's not the point. I was trying to figure out how to distract people, how to grab people's attention, how to, you know, stop somebody in their tracks as they're passing through a gallery of paintings. So I went back home, back to New Jersey, and my studio was half a kitchen, and I opened the drawer, and in the drawer were Fruit Loops and nails rolling around. So I just thought, let's glue these onto the canvas. So this began like, so this is right around 94, 95. So these are some of those paintings from that series. So this is the Lucky Charms painting. So most of it is made from Lucky Charms. That's supposed to be a cauldron there with the gold coins. And there's other things. There's pom-poms and jelly beans and Valentine's Day candy and all sorts of stuff. And to tell you the truth, the original ones that were just made with a glue gun. Nothing was coated, so they all like vanished one way or another. I have a funny story where when I started moving back to New York, I came back went back to New Jersey to get stuff, and there were these paintings, and there was nothing left. They were still hanging, but there was nothing left. And I looked down on the rug, and there was a pile of mouse dung. Now listen, these things were this high on the wall, so these mouse were on top of each other, like in a Ratatouille animation. That's the only way I could figure that they nibbled this to oblivion. So this is when I remade it in 2000. I remade it, and now all of these things have been dipped in vinyl adhesive to keep them from aging, but they still do age. Just like Dieter Roth's sausage book. Use food, it's gonna spoil, unless you use Doritos. So this is a Valentine's Day piece, and it's a bed of Valentine's Day candy covered with some very thin paper, and then here's a series of marshmallows. Here's some marshmallows again. That painting actually at a certain point fell on the ground and started to rot. I loved it. I loved how it turned out. It turned out better. These are some more marshmallow paintings, some more recent. This one is packing material, cotton swabs, cotton balls. Again, this is the same thing. There's a polished stone there that matches the brown. This is more recent. Another branch of the work I'll be showing you is I do reverse glass painting. So this is reverse glass painting, but it has big green tinfoil balls on it. This is another reverse glass painting. This has glitter in the background, tinfoil, and just normal American currency, which has been painted with nail polish and then dipped in tempera flakes on the side. So I guess one of the themes I want to talk about, which goes along with comedy, and comedy you think of yuck yuck, that's funny, whatever, but of course there's plenty of examples in modernism and postmodernism of clowns. Duchamp could be a clown, Koons could be a clown. I mean, and we can't forget about Dada, which is essentially the militarist clowns or absurd school. So I make a lot of objects that aren't necessarily like I would show, but I need to make them, and I make them because they're silly, and I make them because they're dumb. And sometimes I wind up liking them more than my serious work, or what I consider serious. So this was a Christmas present that I made my whole family. It was when Michael Jackson was still alive. And I was like, these were the rejected prototypes for the diamond glove. So I just, again, my glue gun is my favorite friend. I just, I put the glove on and put the hot glue gun in, which I would not recommend. So occasionally the glove did burn and link to the hairs on my hairy arm. Do not try this at home, folks. Another realm of stuff that I do is I make books. I'm not going to go too much into this slide lecture, but this is a stone book. The first one I made was called Bubblegum Braille, and essentially the idea was I wanted to make a book that you touched, a picture that you touched that encouraged that. So this is a book whose cover is completely covered in stones, and each spread is stones and painted with different paints, some nail polish, some acrylic. And it's, when you pick it up, it has it's heavy. So another thing that I've spent a long time doing are collages. I love collages. I love the idea of, when I said collaboration and collecting, those are linked to collage, because when you're collaging, you're not dealing with a blank slate. You're reacting to other information. And I love that. I love having someone else start the ball rolling. So I think this is it's a great book called Arrow to the Sun. It's a 70s book. I recommend checking it out. It's by McDermott, who just passed away a couple of years ago. And it's a 70s book on an Aztec tale. So I took out that main part, and then I painted the bottom and had him dancing with a rock man and made the background and worked on those. So collage is just something I really dig. Also, how this responds to the first thing that I read, which is Ulysses. So I don't know what it means. I probably will never know what it means. But what do I like about it? It's funny as hell. It's colorful. And it's collage. Like, that's what Finnegan's Wake is. It's his most massive collage of images and crashing books of years of work. So that's what I prefer, is to create a debris field that someone can enter their own way and start making associations by themselves. Like, I don't determine it like, this is up, that's down, look at this. Like, so these are just some images from that kind of process where it isn't so much landscape oriented, but things are spreading around. And there's a lot of papers that I painted and cut up, and so my hand is involved. For me, like, color is one of the dominating things. So when I collect books, I'm getting books with a certain type of printing method, and normally those are older. I love how the older printing methods, how the ink sits on the paper, how the color is so absorbed. So sometimes I'm ripping up stuff first for color, so then subject is secondary. That little card there in the middle of the snakes is a child's drawing, Cody's. Now this is just some images of more recent stuff I've been doing. One of the main themes in my work too is music. I'm obsessed with it, so the dots are rhythm, or there's such a history of people using dots, from Hotchkins to minimalism to even Picasso and different points of cubism. So these are more recent collages. In fact, they were made here in July. And in the corner there, that still life is a teenager's actual artwork that I disassembled. These are all from my last stay here. Again, this is work that was done 6 months ago, so it's probably some of the more recent stuff you'll see. Okay, so now I'm just going to go into the realm of the painting that I've spent, I don't know, a little bit over, 10 years or something doing. When was 19? It doesn't matter. Anyhow, my parents moved down to Florida, and again with the collecting, a collagist, I feel, has to constantly go out there to thrift stores, junk stores, swap meets, basements, attics, and look for old stuff to give new life to and to remix and stuff like that. So when I go down to Florida, I used to hit up all of the thrift stores like a crazy person. As soon as my mom would pick me up in the airplane, I'd beeline over and go to all these places. And, that's where I found my first glass art. I thought there's a really crappy little painting of just a humble rose, and I just loved it. It stopped me in my tracks, and its lifeblood was crunkled tinfoil. So it's the heart of a lot of its light source comes from crunkled tinfoil, which goes behind it. And reverse glass painting is worldwide. I mean, there's examples all over the place. So the first series, one of the first series I did, I used a cartoony method, but I was doing boom boxes because I love music. For me, I just saw it as Picasso's guitar paintings. Also, I really had the impulse to draw and paint robots, but I refused to allow myself to do it because I don't know, I thought it was cheesy or something. So I hid the need to do a robot in the face of a boombox. this is a universe lighter. So then another theme that came up was cats. I just grew up with cats, 2 Siamese gorgeous cats, and my parents were cat crazy, everybody's, my father's making up weird stories about cats coming from other planets. So, cats is very Hamish to me, it's very family. So this next series is of cats. There's an ink drawing of a cat. This cat in particular actually had lights behind the eyes, LEDs that kind of went through like the glowing variations. You could see the lights in the eyes there. So these are from, 2005, 6. I did a show at Canada Gallery called Swirly Music, which was a sound installation that involved a lot of these things. I like the idea in this one was that I'd be making a cat, right? But then hide other symbols in its fur, hide other stories in it. And I like that. Like, that was the same thing I was saying. I wanted to draw robots, but didn't feel comfortable. It's like, I think there's ways to get your cake and eat it too sometimes. Here's another landscape-oriented one that I did, and I was reacting to, of course, the toolbar computer stuff. Also, I was thinking of the Picasso beach stuff. But here's a clown, 2 sets of clowns, or maybe even 3, and again, the eyes have LED lights in it. This is more recent. So I went from this transition of doing very cartoony stuff on the glass, and then I wanted to figure out different ways to make the mark, because it started to bug me that it was marker on the glass and that I was just filling in piece by piece, almost like a coloring book, from behind the painting. And that started to bug me. Like, I wanted to make marks with brushes, with my fingers. So a shift happened in the work, and the glass work became more abstract. And so I started to find, it became a game. Like, I tried to find objects that were flat enough, everyday objects, and place them and collage them in there. So in this case, they're combs. I like when paintings are, not too boxy. So it was a game for me to find out what everyday items could actually maintain a certain type of, thinness of the painting to the wall ratio. I think this is an Afropic and a broken up note. So this is from the comb series. What is going on in the background? There is something going on in the background. Is that a dance? So here's some more. I started involving other material. I started getting florist paper, and I found this incredible paper that I'm still obsessed with. It's this, it's probably like a nuclear paper. It's this plastic paper that is interference. It changes as you move around. And that's the thing, was when I found this painting in Florida, I just know as a painter, I didn't understand at first. This teacher from SVA said, Jack Whitten, he goes, painting is constituting a skin. And I didn't know exactly what he meant. He's just that every painter has to create his own skin and make it his own. And essentially make the skin of your monster. So when I saw the glass thing, I was like, damn, this is awesome. It's reflective, it's got tinfoil. So I was able to start to develop a palette which was reflective and sparkly and shiny and iridescent and interference. And I started to get into the fact that it would change depending on where it was hung or what point of the day or what light or what you were wearing. So there are actually paintings that change a lot depending on variables. So here's more of the cone paintings. Now, I was lucky enough to knock into a friend who showed me something great. I don't know if you know the painter Josh Smith, but he showed me the laminator, and that changed my life. And it was really exciting because now I had a drawing version of what was happening in the glass. Again, you can't put a pretzel in a laminator. I found that out. Can't put a bottle cap, can't put a quarter. You probably could get away with a quarter. But, so again, I'm using these florist papers, cutting them out, using different types of plastic and scraps from books and twine and things that the laminator can handle. One other thing I really started to get into was broom bristles. I live in Brooklyn, so I'd go up and down Flatbush buying cheap brooms, but for the color in the broom bristles, some are thicker, some are a wide range of colors. So I wanted using that as a line instead of drawing it myself. So a lot of these things are like those black lines are broom bristles. So the shift that happened in the paintings was I was doing cartoons and stuff like that, and then it almost became like when you're making a slide, when you're in science class and you make the slide and you put the little droplet and then you take the little piece of glass and then you smush that little microcosmic world onto the other piece of glass. That's kind of how I felt with these things, is that was debris that was caught to be analyzed. One cool thing in this, how I show these things is not in frames. I put T-pins on them, and then the light creates a second drawing. I saw a great exhibition of Calder wire portraits, and it was awesome because they did the same thing. They lit them, and you got a double drawing going on.
Meg's does that in the front room.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the more recent glass paintings and plexi paintings. Some of these are plexi. It's funner to paint on glass for me, but plexi is you can drop. So going back to that Mondrian thing, I love geometric abstraction. Mondrian, I think, is staggering. I mean, it's like spaceship art. It's almost the most surreal, or the most psychedelic. Like you think of psychedelic, of the Beatles, and eyes rotating around, and kaleidoscopes. But I think Mondrian's pretty much that. I'm not saying I don't have that much restraint at all, as you can see. So these are just different versions of now, honoring that interest. I'm using different types of foils and plastics, shiny plastics, some of which are not art materials and do change over time. Now this actually was taken from some drawings of Agnes Martin, and I just applied it to a painting. Not this one, but the previous one. Okay, so this is the thing I was trying to say at the beginning of the lecture is, I don't know, I just feel like at times that the artist has to be challenged on his own, like, holy bed or his sacred chamber, wherever he's working, like, whatever rules you set up. Like, I feel someone should come in and try to fuck with them. So, I just feel like that a story isn't interesting unless there's a villain. And so a lot of times I'll set up something like, I want to do this, but then I know, like, I want something to come in and interrupt the scene. So in this instance, it's musicalness. In this instance, I started making these kind of land masses or cloud masses or that interrupted the grid. And I started to feel that something way more dynamic was occurring. Because, like comparing myself to Mondrian is absurd because that guy, how he reworked space. Like my grid is many times just a lattice. So its rhythm is pretty regular. So I needed something to interrupt, and I knew that. And so came these cloud formations. I think this one's called Globo. So there's more of this series. Okay, so then it finally got to this. And this is the thing I'm most excited with because it honors what I mentioned before, comedy. And in getting that cake and eating it too, I feel like I'm a formalist and halfway a Dadaist, and now they are clashing together. And it's not just clouds, not just nice clouds, it's a dirty ass sock that's slammed up there. And so all of this time of trying to make stuff nice and picking tones of color and making all these decisions all of a sudden comes to a screaming halt with the appearance of this guy, of this clown or whatever. The wild thing is we're working with them, these things wind up being stand-ins for feet, stand-in for body, stands-in for noses, stands-in for penises. They wind up taking on a life of their own. But I think about, like, when you have a wild night out on the town, what's the first sign? You wake up and you see your sock dangling over your computer.
You.
This is one where I sprayed chalkboard spray on the front of the glass and started to draw. So then I started, because I have Flatbush at my disposal, started going into these dollar stores and getting some really awesome, colorful socks, girl socks, and kid socks, and started to actually base some of the decisions off the design. So again, like collage, ripping off of this found material. It's funny because I really don't like grotesque things. Like, I'm not a big fan of Francis Bacon. I don't like tortured things. And I guess I suppress in myself, like, that these socks could be very gross. I'm actually denying it. I think it's necessary that these two things confront each other. So this is another instance where the design is built right off of the sock, the situation, the room. It kind of has a little Gustin thing going, I think. It's another version of one. Here's another version of where the pattern is like extending again off of the found sock. And this was a series that I did. Those are silly bands. Those bands that kids, and they're normally alphabets, so I cut them up and refigure them. So you can see like a dolphin up there and a dolphin tail and fish tails and stuff. This is the largest sock piece I did called Steps, and this is the one that was in France recently. This is just a picture. I'll show you very briefly of stuff that I'm doing right now. It hasn't been completely worked out, but again, it's related to that James Joyce thing I read. It has to do with wordplay, slang, words changing, folding into each other, and phones. That's why I love coming up here and my phone doesn't work, so I can just be like, sorry, my phone doesn't work. But so it's a lexicon of like changing words and stuff like that. So that's what I'm up to right now in the glass paintings. This is just to show you the different things I've done with glass fade. See, in this instance, it's what I was mentioning, the bristles, broom bristles.
Is everything behind the glass sandwich behind it?
Everything is at this point, you know. I'm considering like working on top of stuff, but like I like that all this insanity is somehow like cool jazzed eyes by being slicked by the glass. I love Steely Dan. I know now several people are going to leave the room, but that's how I see this. Like, there's all this mayhem, and there's there's many artists today that are dragging all sorts of wonderful things on canvases. But I'm holding on to this idea that this slick skin somehow changes it slightly. So this is just another example of me trying to make marks on the glass now, not with a marker. So this is all finger painting. Okay, so I just wanted to bring this up. So this is a show I did recently. Right beside me is Jesse A. Greenberg, really fabulous artist. I love his stuff, and if you check out his work, you'll definitely see a connection between him and me. We've had shows before, and this is a gallery that he runs in Gowanus called 24/7 365, and he gave me the opportunity to put together a show. I haven't put any drawings in this slide lecture really, but I love drawing to death. I love it as a concept. I love it as a state of being. I think drawing can occur with your phone. A drawing could occur with a video camera. But in this instance, it strictly was black and white drawing. It could be with markers. It could be with your fingers. It didn't matter. It just had to be black and white. But the reason I mentioned this show, I had 86 artists in there, many of which showed more than one piece. So we had, in 2 galleries, there was another gallery, so we had all these drawings set up. But why I'm mentioning this is, now I wanted the experience to be that you come into this place and it's coated with drawings, from ceiling to floor, covered with drawings. So I invited all the exhibiting artists to make 2 types of work. Work to be hung up on the walls and work to be sacrificed, or fake drawings. What is a fake drawing? Well, I sat down and tried to make some fake drawings, and you know what I found out? I like the fake drawings better than the real drawings. And I just found that a very funny situation where, well, this is the real drawings again, where when you know something's going to be destroyed or sacrificed, like maybe there's in that instance some more freedom. And you're not caught up with what your parents want you to do, or what you think you should do, or what your school taught you to do, or what you think some group of people think you should do. And I think that's really important, that channel of art making be still around. A visiting artist that's been up here, Chris Martin, told me a funny story where he was with this one artist who was constantly frustrated with their work. And they were just like, I hate my work. And then he finally said, well, let's burn it. And so then all of a sudden it became an art burning party. And so people gathered around the bonfire and started making drawings. And they found the identical thing. All of a sudden they're making these drawings to be destroyed. And they're like, whoa, 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 I don't want to put that one in the fire. They're like, it's too late, you're in the drawing burning part. But the reason I'm like spending time to talk about this is that I feel like what I try to do in my own practice is just really make things that are silly or stupid purposely, and allow that kind of silly childish play to really have a spotlight. These are by artist Catherine Bernhardt. So the artist's picture, when people are always asking, yeah, we need a photo of the artist. So Me and my father, who was a photographer, it was actually during that big hurricane that happened in New York. We were stuck in my studio, and we did this collaboration together. So these are spaghetti glasses. So this is the last thing that I think that I'm going to be mentioning, and this is a new series that I started up in some of those insanely hot days that happened. I don't know whether it was July or when it was, but in New York, I was just like a constant fountain or waterfall of sweat, you know. And so I wanted an excuse to look into an icebox. And I started to think, like, I have all these collages half done, you know, something that I didn't know what to do with. So I was like, why don't I make a frozen collage? So I got like a pan. I put the collage that was, you know, half baked in the pan, and then cut out some other things and floated it and filled it with water. So this is the first one. The other thing is, in my studio, I have a refrigerator that I don't use. So I started to think, I'm going to turn it into a flat file. Where did the channel changer go? It's in the freezer. So then I started to use crazier things, CDs, cords, this. Again, it relates to the laminated stuff and the glass paintings. But also, it has no hope of survival. What I realized is that they disappear in the freezer. Even in the freezer, they slowly disappear. I think it's called sublimation or something. They would have to be in a bag for them to survive. This one's with bottle cleaners, Brillo pads, the buck knife, and crayon, and some party favors. This is the other side of it. This is one of the masterpieces: cat food, kidney beans, hair gel, and a toothbrush. So I got excited that I could start using food materials, you know, and I got obsessed with maybe trying to make stained glass out of hair gel. This one is made with Aquafresh and 3 types of hair gel. And what was cool is that when I did the lines in the pan, I first try to freeze it a little bit and then add the water. But if they started to dissolve, the Aquafresh dissolved and crystallized. So that pattern is whatever nuclear material we're brushing your teeth with. There's a sock back there. I thought, hell, I put them on plexi. Why don't I freeze one? Oh, this is a kid who's turning 8. So we got the yin and yang. We have a kid who's turning 8, which is an infinity sign. And right below there, where that bubble is a fossil. This one is probably the most recent. This one is rubber bands and erasers. So this is an emery board, to rubber bands, and I put in a whole bunch of aspirin, which then dissolved and turned into those little dusty dunes. This one is a bath mat with 4 different types of hair gel windows. That's it.